Howdy, everybody. We're Super Monkey Fighters back with another What Would You Change? Continuing our monthly theme of horror movies, we are going into Halloween, the original from 1978. Directed by John Carpenter, written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Stars Donald Pleasence, Jamie Lee Curtis in her first film, Nancy Keys as Nancy Loomis, PJ Souls, Charles Cypher, Kyle Richards, and a bunch of other people. The little blurb on IMDb is 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again. Let's start with Monkey Feathers. What'd you like?
I like the movie. I do. It's funny because we've talked about other movies and it has kind of the nostalgic feel, like it can't do any wrong in my mind, even though it can, because let's be honest, it's still a movie. But because we talked about Friday the 13th and how that one didn't actually showcase the killer. It was kind of left up to the imagination of who's the killer, who's it not. Whereas this one, it's Mike. It's Mike Myers. He's the killer. You see him. He's stalking people. So what I liked about him in this movie was how they used him to kind of just be in the background. Because there are a lot of scenes where he's there and only Laurie will see him. And then there's the scene with, I can't remember which friend it is, but it's the one who spills butter on her shirt and she has to clean. But he's right outside the door just watching her. Yeah. And he doesn't do anything. But I liked a lot of how they used him to help create tension. But at the same time, with the soundtrack, especially in the beginning of the film where he's driving around and it's very iconic music specifically for him all the time. So there are some illogical situations with that. Like, why is he driving around town randomly if it really is him driving around town randomly? But overall, I really did like how he was in scenes where he was just the creep factor of watching them before he's going to kill them. So I like the movie. I know it's cheesy. I know it's from 1978. Whatever. It's still enjoyable. With this film, it's overacting again with death scenes and
bodies hanging from the ceiling.
Bodies hanging from ceilings. Even though that body, he was illogical death. In this one. Yeah. Illogical death, where you somehow have a butcher knife that impales a dude through him and into a door, and he's hanging there. Yeah, that's logical. But to then take him down and swing him from the ceiling. Why? He was fine impaled, even though he really wasn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like it. Whatever. I know that you both are going to get into this and say, well, it sucked for this reason and this reason.
Maybe. I don't know. Let's start Nugget. Was there anything you really liked about it?
So, if we were going to compare this to Friday the 13th, I do agree that the creepiness factor was better. The fact that you kind of, there's that dynamic between Laurie and Michael Myers that is kind of kept throughout at least the first part of the film. They really play on that, you know. It's like she's aware. It's like she's the only one aware of this guy, and everyone else is oblivious. So I think that was a better way of setting things up compared to complete randomness that makes absolutely no sense. So they did try and go that way. And I did think that was good in general. That's all I got. That's all I wrote down. I just said I like to focus on Laurie's perspective of what was happening.
Yeah. I it's kind of mixed bag. Like the things I like are also things I don't really like. The fact that he was there, he was an actual character, not just a first person view of things happening.
But there were first person shots.
There were first person shots, but I do also think that some of the, like, it didn't build tension to have him just standing around looking at people. It's like, I mean, I know who you are and I know what's going on, and I'm looking at this, 40 years later kind of thing. But
yeah, and I don't think it was that bored. He was just standing there. I think it was Laurie's reaction and how she's taking that. Yeah, but he was just standing there doing nothing and just being creepy.
Yeah, and there's sequences where, like, the kid, after he drops his pumpkin, he actually grabs one of the bullies and then lets the kid go and then follows the sad kid as the sad kid slowly walks away. And you're like, is he supposed to be identifying with the kid? Is he targeting out the weak one? Is, like, what's going on? And then I did like the soundtrack. I do think John Carpenter does very good, because he does most of the soundtracks for his movies. I do think he did that very well. I do think it was a good, like, early film, just kind of like with Friday the 13th, where it was, hey, this is kind of our first go of things. We've got a smaller budget. I did like, honestly, I thought that the acting, especially Jamie Lee Curtis early on, was really good. I think the last half was a lot more amateurish, but again, first movie. But she was very believable in the character that she was in, as kind of the smart kid. I did like the fact that PJ Souls was in it solely for the fact that there is a Local H album that's titled Whatever Happened to PJ Souls. And it's a weird reference to an actor who kind of fell away. And so to see that name pop up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from that album I used to listen to all the time. I do think they did a very good job of creating an iconic killer. But I am still surprised that this spawned an entire series and revamped a genre kind of thing, because I was bored for 90% of this movie. I do think there's a lot of interesting things, like, as I've learned about the behind the scenes and that kind of stuff, where they shot it in California. And you can see this early on in the film too, because they always talk about, they're like, it's this perfect little place that looks like it could be anywhere USA, but a block away there's palm trees and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that is actually one thing, now thinking back, that I did think of when I was watching it, that the environment, I think, was pretty believable. Both it was really just basically a neighborhood and then the school. Like, that was the majority of it, but it was all within that bubble. There wasn't anything that really took you out of it. I guess there were the other kind of I don't know, downtown shots, but it's just a little bit. But yeah, all in all, like, I felt like it felt like a very rich environment, even though it is just the neighborhood and fairly simple.
So I did like all of that kind of stuff. I do like, that they were trying to do a lot with a little. They did a lot better at establishing very simply that he's bad, he's evil. And with overly dramatic ways, the doctor, I mean, the whole reason that he exists is to just reinforce that, no, he is evil. But you start out by seeing him be evil from a very young age. Whereas a lot of the other ones, you're just like, you don't, Friday the 13th, you don't know it. Like, you see the murder,
you don't even know who it is. You don't
know anything that's going on. You don't know who it is. And then they get to the end and they're like, we need to explain all these things. Nothing that's relevant to anything we've done in the movie so far is the reason why all of this is happening. And you're just like, okay, that's great. The Invisible Man, they imply a lot of bad from the main character, but you don't see any of it. Or from the villain in it, Freddy Krueger, I think, takes it to the next step with Nightmare on Elm Street, where you see, I mean, they build him up as the worst possible person that could be there, and then make him even more powerful by killing him, kind of a thing. But I think this one did that quick, simple, easy. We don't need to over-explain things. He's evil. Here's how. Let's just continue to reaffirm that and show him being evil. And then the hint of supernatural is there, right? Where he's stabbed several times, shot several times, falls out of a building, and then disappears. I think they set that up very well as it's the boogeyman, right? And that was kind of the whole point, where he's the boogeyman. And I did like that. I did like Donald Pleasence's over-the-top dramatic doctor. I think he delivered lines very well. He was entertaining, if not a little. You kind of questioned why he was around.
So then what would you say solidifies your dislike about this film?
It's 80 minutes of nothing. Like, it's 80 minutes of him standing around, and if that doesn't start ratcheting up your tension or your fear, it's a really boring and long 80 minutes of people walking around and looking at things and hearing a noise and being like, huh? And a lot of I'm going to walk over here to pick up this one thing so that I can walk back across the set to set it down, to walk back across the set to pick up a different thing. And if it, like I said, if it doesn't get you and ratchet up the tension, you're just bored until the last 10 minutes of the movie when everything starts happening.
How would you change it then?
I would have probably done a little bit more with him and the doctor to establish that. Because even when the doctor's talking about him, like, he says straight up, he sat here for 15 years staring at a wall, planning out this night. So I don't know why the doctor's afraid of him, because from the doctor's own words, he was pretty much catatonic for 15 years. So just showcasing that a lot more. And then instead of a lot of a day in the life of a babysitter, done more to really build that up. And just the weird, the doctor knew how evil he was, and I've been telling you guys for years, nobody believed me. Like, just at the time, I guess that's okay, but it doesn't hold the test. It doesn't stand up to the test of time. Like, he's clearly a hardened criminal who hasn't reformed in any way. The system would generally treat him as such, kind of a thing, and people would be a lot more worried.
Yeah, wouldn't it be the doctor's responsibility to ensure that he gets the treatment or is put in a facility that's equivalent to how he's been diagnosed? Yeah, like that's his job, right? And
they, he talks about that a little bit, but you don't ever see any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then also his whole plan, like I said, where his plan was to, I'm going to go to the town, I'm going to warn the sheriff. But then when the sheriff says, I'll get my people to look into it, he's like, no, because then they'll find him on every street corner. Or, they'll actually find him, because your plan was to just stand in the bushes outside his old house.
And then you don't find him until like the last 5 minutes.
For most of the movie, and then you happen to turn around and see the car that he stole.
I'm walking down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. I just stumbled upon it.
Yeah. It wasn't even that he was walking down the road and stumbled upon the car. He literally turned around and it was across the street from him. So just, nothing Michael Myers did beyond the first scene really ratcheted up any fear or tension for me. It's also difficult because this is, 40 years old, and I know all of the horror movie tropes, and I know that this was kind of the beginning of it all. But it was just hard to kind of get into all of it and be like, oh, wow, this is I mean, and I've never been a big Halloween fan as much as I have a lot of the other horror movies. But I've also never been afraid of them once I wasn't a young kid. I've always been like, oh, these are goofy, campy, fun, don't think about kind of movies that you'd forget, like after, a little bit, you're just like, all right, I'm done. That's it. We're out. I'm good. And away we go. So
then you, Nugget, what is your dislike of this film?
The doctor. Like, that whole character. Like, yeah. I don't even understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why does a doctor have a gun? Like, that goes completely against the whole point of being a doctor.
He had a permit.
Yeah,
And I guess
don't you take an oath as a doctor to not harm
isn't he
anyone?
more like isn't he more like a psychologist and less like an actual
Medical
doctor who
doctor?
heals people? Yeah.
I don't know, I think they explore
Yeah,
that more in
probably,
the sequel, but it's still, yeah, it's a strange. He seems more vigilante than a doctor.
He's a doctor that like wants to be a cop, like on the weekends, but isn't. And yeah, the whole point is like I'm gonna hide in his house or hide by his house for most of the film.
Well,
Like,
and the fact that the cop takes orders from him, pretty much, like the sheriff would be like, "No, I'm gonna go take care of my town. You."
Yeah, and he's walking down the street, and look, there he is. Let me go shoot him. I'm gonna walk into this house, and like it was just too convenient, and it is like it didn't make any sense at all. It just happened, and they just needed it to happen.
Well, and that's most of the movie too. I mean, the murders.
Yeah, but that was
happened.
To me like over the top, blatant. Like it didn't make any sense whatsoever. Like the rest of it, they're trying to fit the blocks together, but that one they definitely try to put a square peg in a round hole with that one.
Yeah.
So then, Nugget, how would you change it to make it better?
It's hard to really say like one specific thing with this, but to me it comes down to honestly, if they could have integrated the doctor in a more realistic role, that I think that would have strengthened the film a lot, because to me that just completely took me out of it. Like integrate him throughout, like make him a more central role or more involved with the plot progression, as opposed to he's in the beginning, he's hiding in the bushes, and then shows up at the end and kills him. Either remove him or integrate him more, because the way that he's currently in there just does not work for me.
Monkey Feathers, how would you improve on Halloween? Because it sounds like it's the perfect movie for you.
No, it's not the perfect movie. But yeah, I'll start with my dislike and then, go from there.
No.
It's hard because I'm looking at these movies 40 years later. The thing that I have often disliked about these horror movies is they present to you the unkillable villain, where you can stab him 500 times, he's going to get back up. You can shoot him 6 times with a gun, and he's going to fall over a balcony, and he'll survive.
Yeah.
I dislike that so much with horror movies because they provide no stakes. Because I'm sure, of course, when these movies were first coming out, it's the shock value of, oh my gosh, he's survived, and now he's going to come back for a sequel. I'm sure it's the shock value, but with all of its sequels that these movies spawn, it provides no stakes because you know that the killer's going to come back. That all the effort you've gone through in these films to potentially kill him, he's not going to die. He's going to come back.
One of the worst ones that Halloween's done, I think it's Halloween H2O. They very definitively kill him, and like you see him dead. And then they make a sequel where they're like, oh, actually, here's what really happened. And they replay the scene and change it all. And so
It makes it so unrealistic. Because we've talked about Scream. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about that series is that, spoiler alert, study. But with Scream, they kill off the people. And it's new people who come in a different scenario. In the third one, this guy's getting shot, but the reason why you realize he's surviving it is because he's wearing a bulletproof vest. So it creates a more realistic environment. Some things, sure, are not quite so realistic in how it's done, but it provides a human element to a killer. And with a lot of these older films, it doesn't. And so at the end, they're just going to survive and they'll come back for a sequel and another sequel and another sequel. I just dislike it. And I dislike the fact that when these people are getting killed, they're not fighting back. They're just accepting their fate of, oh, I have all this extra time to fight back. Like the car scene where he has her by the neck, but she has ample room to punch him in the face.
Well,
like,
and she
you could fight back.
She kind of does squirm out of his grasp a few times, or very easily could. She's like, oh no, I need to stop so that I don't get away from him.
I know. It's so frustrating because if someone's trying to kill you, if you could punch him in the face and you have ample angle to do so, you're going to fight back and not just, I'm dead. I'm going to die and accept this as my fate. It's so frustrating, especially the guy where he's a man. He's a man, and
he doesn't kick or fight or like
he doesn't do anything.
Somebody's strangling you to death and they've got you off the ground. You're gonna kick him in the nuts as hard as you can,
or
because you know that's gonna stop whatever's happening. Yeah.
It's so frustrating. So those are the two main things that I didn't like. But I know the main thing that I would change is stop making villains unkillable.
It's kind of a letdown, right? Because you're like, oh, they're dead, and then it's like, nope, they're not dead, like usual. Okay.
It provides no stakes in you investing in it, because at the end of the movie, you know that they're going to survive and it's going to be another sequel. And I hate the formula of Hollywood where we need a sequel because it did so well the first time. No, just make a really good movie the first time. Yeah. And then figure out a way, if you want to make a sequel, figure out a way to do it that's creative without turning someone into a god. And then you can't kill them.
Well, you don't want to risk being able to turn 300,000 into 70 million.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with that.
They figured out a way to print money, and they did. I mean, Halloween cost, I'm sure merchandise sales went, none of the budgets or the grosses have factored any of that into it. So, but there's also kind of, I think, why they started to flounder is the audiences weren't as interested because they weren't, didn't have the same effect.
Yeah.
But also budgets went up and, the profitability went down. But would you guys recommend it? I guess we can end on that. Would you recommend people go and watch it? Because
yes.
I would say just the fact that it's kind of started or was a big influence into how horror films began. I would say from a historical perspective, it's good to watch.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at it as it's one, horror movies growing up was things that, and violent and R-rated films were things that parents were always trying to protect you and tell you not to watch. I think I'm going to tell my kids not to watch it just because it's boring, not because of any of the classical reasons you'd say kids don't watch. It's like, hey, if you guys want to see it, okay, but you'll be bored for a good chunk of it because there's not a lot going on. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, I think we'll end it there. We'll call it on that note. Unless you guys have anything else desperate you want to say about Halloween. But yeah, that's that. So make sure you leave comments. Let us know what you thought of Halloween. Let us know how we're wrong about everything we've said. And like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Adios.